So imagine now we've got a smiley face working. Now, if we wanted to have lots of smiley faces all over the screen, we wouldn't really want to copy and paste this code lots and lots of time, making it really big. So the way that you deal with that is to create a function of its own to, let's say, draw this face. So let's make that. Let's go void draw smiley, and this is going to be a different type of function, one that takes parameters, and these parameters are going to be let's say a float value. There are two types of numbers: floats and, well, maybe more actually, floats, floating point numbers, and integers. So we'll use float x and float y. And another thing we might want to define is how big we want to have it. So let's call this float face width. I think that'll work. So we're going to take all this code here and cut it out of there, put it into here, and draw smiley. So let's say we wanted it to draw it at position 100, and then near the bottom, let's say 400. And then we instead of having it very wide, let's say we wanted it to be quite small. So let's say 100. So what this will do, this command here, draw will get called all the time, and draw smiley, that will then call this. Now we haven't used any of these variables at this point, so we could use face width here for the width of the face, and we haven't used x and y, because here we were centering it before, weren't we? So let's use x and y there, and here, so we can change x and y without having to rewrite this all sorts of times. X and y, and we'll need to change some others, so that we haven't got a w at this point, although we have got a w, but it's a global variable. It's not one that we're passing into here. So let's instead try and work out what w is within this function, and let's say it's going to be let's say it's a ninth of the face width. So we could say int w equals face width divided by 9, and it might not like that. Yeah, it doesn't like that, because that will give us a floating point number. So let's make it a float. Okay, yes it does, because you divide like a random number. There we go. So let's see if that now works pretty much the same, but with a different parameters coming in. Oh, no. Because we got rid of w, it now says I've never heard of w. So let's get rid of that. There we go. And run. So we now have a smaller smiley face drawing down here, but all the parameters just need all these look. So when we said x minus 100, that's going to be off. So this 100, we need to get rid of the absolute numbers. So we could sort of say minus w. We've got like this number here. Let's just try that for now. So x minus w, and see if we start to get some eyes appearing. Oh, yeah. So we might need to work on that. So why isn't this working? Well, we've got fixed values in here. So what we actually want is we want to use face width times 0. Let's say 7s. I'm just guessing here, which will make it smaller. So there, I quite like that. Slightly different eye positioning. But now, the cool thing about that is that we can now use this function. This is now, we've created a new thing. We can say make that 300, 100, and we can copy and paste this again. And let's make a big one there, and we can make one that's 400. Not a bit off the screen. 40 here, and let's make it 80. And so now we've got a way to draw multiple, or rather three at the moment, smileys on face. But one thing that we could do is say, well, every time that draw is called, why don't we use a random number that's somewhere between 0 and the width? And we can do that like this, 0 width, or we could just pass in the width. So we could use a random value here, height. And we start to get, now these are all splatting the screen and getting rid of the black, which might be the effect that you want. But if it wasn't the effect that you want, and you wanted it to be it moving around the screen at random, that's because when draw is called, we've only called draw the background, set it to black there. So were we to take that and copy and paste into there and run, you can see we've now got a very different thing happening, which is that the background is getting painted black, and then the smiley face is getting drawn at a random location. Now I quite liked that previous one, so I'm going to use that as a feature of it. And what I'm going to actually do is randomize the size between, let's say, 10 and 100. Let's try that. So you can see now I'm starting, this is the sort, and so when I click, that's when a picture gets saved with this in the scripts folder called smiley.jpg, and you can see I've now then created that picture at that point. So there, we've started to make much tidier code. I mean, I often have things all in the draw routine, but when you quite often want to do repetitive things, it's good for something to have its own function. So now what we're going to do is, instead of having it appearing random all over the screen, let's make it animate across the screen from left to right. So we need an X position. So let's call this something like smiley X. So let's initialize that with a value in the setup. Smiley X equals 0. So that's the left hand side. And what we're going to do here is, instead of setting it to a random place, let's set it to smiley X, and let's keep its position at a certain point. Let's say height divided by 2, halfway down the screen, and let's leave that as it is. So now, because we created a variable here called smiley X, and we set it here, we're not actually changing it, so it needs to happen in here to regularly change it. So let's, one trick we could do is smiley X plus equals 10, so that adds 10 onto it. So let's see what that does. Off it goes. Now you can see we've still got the it not wiping the screen, so let's bring that back in and see what we've got there. Okay, I'm maybe going to have a fixed value for the size of it. Let's make it what, 80, and there. But once it gets to the edge, it just keeps on going forever. This number doesn't know. So we could put a check in here and say if smiley x is greater than the width, start block, end block, smiley x, set it back again, equals naught, semicolon. So boom. So now when that goes off, it then comes around. Now we could kind of alter this slightly by, instead of having this set as to a fixed position, one of the other built-in variables is mouse y. So what will happen when what we've actually got now is something at the startings of a Flappy Bird sort of game. So we can start to, you can see we start to what we're doing, and we could say, well, maybe I don't want to animate it. Let's just set it to mouse x and mouse y, and so when we run it this time, what we get is, you can see if we're making a game, this might be how we might control the character. So there we go. We've learned how to use a variable, and we'll end up using lots of variables in following sessions. So now, if we wanted to add some media to our, instead of using a smiley, we wanted to use a picture of a cow. Well, first thing that we need to do is to get our media into the right place. So typically, if we go here and then go to the sketch folder, you can see here all processing sketches have a name, and then the PDE file has the same name as inside. So the best place to organize your media, if you're going to use lots of it, is to create a new folder called data. And into there we can put anything that we want to use a little later. So for example, I've got a cow image here and a cow sound called moo.wav. So I'll put those into there. So processing will now know where that is. So let's before we use media, we have to create variables for them. So the type of variable that we use for an image is called a processing image. And then let's give it a name like cow. So that has just defined that we're going to use that. That's something we're going to use. So now we need to load that image into our code. So we can sort of say cow equals load image cow dot png semicolon. And now we can use that cow picture data, if you like, and let's use it. Shall we use it instead of the face? Let's draw it on top of the face. So under there, the command we use to draw images is image, and then that's our cow data. And the same thing applies. We can pass two parameters to this, or four. Let's try x and y, but also width and height. But let's see what we get. There. So you can see that they're drawing slightly different places because there's different commands we can say where we relative to that point. Do we want it on the center or do we want it on the corner? Now, if we wanted to play a sound, I've still got mouse pressed related to sound. I'm going to comment that out for now. We need to make sure that we go to Sketch and import a library. You can see add library here, and I've already got it added, but we can filter here, add a library called sound. There we go, it's installed, and we can click on there to find out more about it. So sound. So the code is this. First thing, because this is an extra bit of code, we can import that, and then we need to define a variable. So to begin with, say load that extra code for doing sounds, and I'm going to call my sound variable moo. Seem more sensible. So it's saying create a sound variable called moo. So then we need to oh, am I using the right one? I think I'm using the wrong one. Let me just check. Sound file. Here we go. That makes more sense. Sound file. Sound is if you're generating sort of synthesizer sounds. So let's call this moo. So it works very like an image. We say moo equals a new sound file, and we pass it the word this, which means this project, and it was called moo.wav. So we've now loaded that sound, but we don't want it playing all the time. It make a horrible noise. But when we click the mouse, let's play that sound. So instead of file there, we use moo.play. So let's see if it works. So every time, you can see if we click twice, you can see. If we'd have called that in draw, it would have just been every few milliseconds. It would have been moo 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 moo. So there, this is how we also work with fonts. You define a font. Let's call it my font, like that. Oh, sorry, it's p font. There we go. P font, processing font, and then you need to load the font. And then you set the text to be that font. So shall we do that? Let's see if I can find. I've got a font called Franklin Gothic that I like. Medium metallic. Let's try that one. So I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to go to my processing folder. Command K is how I do it. Put it into my data folder. Oh, can't paste like that. Bear with me. It's a terrible find. There we go. Medium heavy italic, that's the one that I like. So there's my folder with my data in it. Put that into there. And I'm going to copy the name because it makes it easier. And here I'm going to say my font equals load font. That. So then I can apply that font to the text, if it's sort of the text engine of processing. And down here, let's say when we're drawing the cow, if we want to use text, the command is text, and then we can sort of say X and Y, but we've got no fill set here, so the text itself will need the fill there. So we need to turn the fill back on. So let's see if that works. Oh, we've missed off a semicolon, so let's do that. Oh, I've used the wrong command. Instead of load font, we use create font, and I think we have to give that a number, which is how big we want it to be. So I'm going to say 80, but I'm also going to do that here by going text size 80. There, let's see if that works. So there, we've created a really strange thing. But what we've done is we've dealt with fonts, graphics, sounds, and also we've done with the drawing of the screen. So if we run this now, we'll create a strange painting program where that isn't erased from screen.